Rahim's life had begun to change, but not in ways that were easy or comfortable. The small recognition he started receiving in school brought a new kind of attention, and with it came new challenges. While some students began to respect him, others grew jealous. They couldn't understand how someone without a phone, without internet, and without any modern resources was outperforming them. To them, it didn't make sense, and instead of trying to learn from him, they chose to doubt him. Rumors started spreading quietly. Some students claimed Rahim was getting special treatment from teachers. Others said he must be secretly studying from somewhere else, as if his hard work alone wasn't enough to explain his progress. Rahim heard these whispers, and although he tried to ignore them, they began to weigh on his heart. It wasn't the criticism that hurt him the most, it was the feeling that no matter how hard he worked, some people would never understand his journey. Despite this, Rahim didn't stop. He had come too far to turn back. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise, when the world was still quiet and undisturbed. He would sit outside his house, open his books, and begin studying while the first light of day slowly appeared. These early hours became his secret advantage. While others were asleep or distracted later in the day, Rahim had already invested hours into improving himself. His routine became stricter. He started setting time for everything: study, rest, helping his family, and reflection. Without the constant pull of notifications, he found it easier to stay consistent. But consistency is never easy. There were days when his mind felt tired, when the same pages seemed harder to understand, when motivation felt distant. On those days, Rahim reminded himself why he had started. He would think of his father's struggles, his mother's sacrifices, and the dreams he had quietly built within himself. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. The school announced a district-level competition, an academic challenge where students from different schools would compete. It was a big opportunity, something that could open doors for the future. Rahim's teacher immediately thought of him and encouraged him to participate. At first, Rahim hesitated. The idea of competing with students from larger schools, who had access to better resources, internet, and coaching, made him nervous. He had always worked quietly in his own space. Stepping into a bigger arena felt intimidating. But deep down, he knew that growth comes from stepping outside comfort zones. With encouragement from his teacher and family, Rahim decided to take the risk. He registered for the competition. The days that followed were intense. Rahim pushed himself harder than ever before. He revised every subject, practiced difficult questions, and tried to strengthen his weak areas. Without online resources, he relied on books, notes, and discussions with his teacher. Sometimes, he felt like he was at a disadvantage. There were moments when he wished he could quickly look up information like others could. But instead of letting that thought weaken him, he turned it into motivation. "I may not have everything," he told himself, "but I will use everything I have." The day of the competition finally arrived. Rahim traveled to the city for the first time in a long while. The environment was completely different: big buildings, crowded streets, and students who looked confident and well prepared. Many of them carried smartphones, discussing topics and revising notes until the last moment. Rahim stood quietly among them, holding his simple notebook. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. He wondered if he truly belonged there. But then he took a deep breath and reminded himself of the hours he had spent preparing in silence. He realized that confidence doesn't come from what you carry in your hand, but from what you build inside your mind. When the competition began, Rahim focused completely. The questions were challenging, some even unfamiliar. But instead of panicking, he stayed calm. He approached each question with patience, thinking carefully before answering. His habit of deep focus, built over years without distraction, became his greatest strength in that moment. Time passed quickly, and soon the competition ended. Rahim walked out feeling unsure. He had done his best, but he didn't know if it was enough. The results would be announced later. Days went by, and life returned to its usual routine. Rahim continued studying, helping his family, and staying consistent. He tried not to think too much about the competition, but somewhere inside, he hoped that his effort would lead to something meaningful. Then one day, the school received the results. The entire class gathered as the teacher stood with the list in hand. There was a moment of silence before the teacher spoke. When Rahim's name was announced among the top performers, the room filled with surprise. Some students couldn't believe it. Others looked at him with a mix of shock and respect. Rahim himself was quiet. He didn't jump with excitement or celebrate loudly. Instead, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just about winning or ranking, it was about proving to himself that his path, though different, was valid. This achievement changed everything. The same voices that once doubted him now spoke with admiration. Teachers from other classes began to notice him. Students who had never paid attention to him now wanted to know his secret. But Rahim's answer remained simple: focus and consistency. However, success also brought new pressure. Expectations started to rise. People began to expect more from him, to see him perform at the same level again and again. What once was a personal journey now felt like a responsibility. Rahim realized that success is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of a new challenge. At home, his father looked at him with pride, but also reminded him to stay humble. "This is just one step," he said. "Don't let it make you forget where you started." Rahim nodded. He understood the importance of staying grounded. He knew that if he allowed success to distract him, it could undo everything he had built. As days passed, Rahim began thinking about his future more seriously. The competition had opened a door in his mind. He started dreaming bigger. Not just about passing exams, but about achieving something meaningful in life. He wanted to continue his education, to explore opportunities beyond his village, and to prove that limitations do not define a person's potential. But life had its own plans. One evening, Rahim returned home to find his father sitting quietly, looking more tired than usual. There was a silence in the house that felt different. When Rahim asked what was wrong, his father hesitated before speaking. Work had become uncertain. There were days when he couldn't find enough labor, and the income was no longer stable. The situation at home was becoming difficult. Expenses were increasing, and continuing education might not be as simple as Rahim had hoped. Hearing this, Rahim felt a heavy weight on his chest. All his dreams, all his plans, suddenly seemed uncertain. For a moment, he felt lost. He had worked so hard, come so far, and now it felt like everything was slipping away. But then, something inside him refused to break. He remembered all the struggles he had already faced. He remembered the loneliness, the doubts, the hard work. And he realized that challenges are not signs to stop, they are tests to see how badly you want to continue. That night, Rahim sat under the same tree where his journey had begun. The wind was quiet, and the stars shone above him. He thought about his situation, his family, and his dreams. And in that silence, he made a decision. No matter how difficult things became, he would not give up. He didn't know exactly how he would move forward, but he knew one thing for sure: he would find a way. Because the boy who once said nothing had already proven that he could build something from silence. And this time, the challenge was bigger than ever. Rahim was ready to fight again, but this time, the battle was not just about studies, it was about survival.